This is me reacting, trying to figure out if we're live on Facebook, on CreativePro Live, with Lisa Carney. My name is David Blatner, and I'm the co-host of CreativePro Week and CreativePro.com and InDesignSecrets.com. And I'm here with the Lisa Carney, who I'm very excited about being face-to-face with, because I don't get to see you very often.
Not very much, no.
And so it's so wonderful that I get to kind of hang out here on in Facebook land with you a little bit.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for having me. This is fun.
Oh, absolutely. So please introduce yourself to the CreativePro community a little bit. And I want to get a sense of who you are, but also where did you come from? How did you get to this place where, I mean, you're a highly sought after photo retoucher, compositor. I mean, give us information.
All right, let me give you a little bit of skinny. So hi, I'm Lisa. I'm what you'd call a high-end print finisher, retoucher, compositor. So it's Photoshop. It's all Photoshop all day long for decades now. Yeah. And I think like many of us, I took this really crazy route getting here. I do movie posters, TV posters. It's all print. High-end beauty work.
It's all
I don't
print.
do fashion. Sorry?
It's all print. It's still.
I do only print.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a print specialist, if you will. I could do other stuff, but it's not my world. It all translates though.
If it's under 300 pixels per inch, it's just not even worth looking at. Okay. All right.
And honestly, I will tell you, it is so much harder to retouch on a small photo than a large photo. Way harder.
Because
way harder.
Not enough data. You don't have enough data
exactly
there.
Right. That's exactly right. And harder to push around. But anyway, how did I get to this magical place that I live in is I actually was a photography major. I went to Art Center in Pasadena for photography, and I thought I'd be a fashion shooter. And then I realized that was not my tribe. Those weren't my people. I love the work, but yeah. we just didn't meld. And so I became an editorial portrait shooter, which was awesome. I really enjoyed that. Only I had this kind of quirk about me, which is I like to shoot people how they feel to me, not necessarily how they want to be represented. So if you can imagine, I've got an actor who comes to me and she wants to present herself as all super sexy and strong and powerful, but I see this very weak, timid, broken bird. And my initial images will look broken. I can tweak it to get to the strength, but
right.
I guess it's kind of an empath kind of thing like that. I produce what I feel. And I realized that I was conflicted with my desire, like what I wanted to produce and what people were asking me for. And I thought, I'm going to be able to make a living and keep my soul. So at the time, now I do have to admit, I know no one will believe this looking at me, and I'm kidding completely, but I started 100 years ago. I started when Photoshop wasn't what movie poster people even used. They used proprietary hardware, Shima-second machines, Quantel paint boxes. Okay. Photoshop didn't even have layers back then.
Yeah, pre-layers.
Yeah. So, but my photography had a lot of compositing. I would take slides and transparencies and sandwich them together in my personal work and in my editorial work. So I took to Photoshop like a duck to water.
Yeah.
And when I was in Pasadena, there was something called a finishing house, which did high-end movie posters. And it was called Metaphor Imaging. And I worked right next door to it. And I'd walk by every day and I'd look at these posters and go, oh my God, I love these. So I did what you would commonly call an informational interview. I went in and I said, you know what, I really want to work here. Please, what would it take? And this guy, Mark Armstrong, God love him, he said, all right, you need to go learn how to mask and basic retouching on a Mac, because they would have people prep the jobs for the movie posters back then. I said, all right. And I went out, and for 9 months, I had 3 jobs. I worked a gazillion hours, like 100 hours a week, to learn this. And then I went back and I knocked on the door and I said, hi, you said if I learn this. And he told me later, years later, that he felt obligated to give me a shot. So he sat me down at this giant suite room with a huge Wacom. I'd never seen a Wacom tablet in my entire life. You know, I was a poor student. And, you know, I got the pen in my hand and I'm like, oh. And they basically went in at 9 at night. They closed the door. They said, we'll see you in the morning. And they gave me a Barbie job to do. And the Barbie job is when you have prototype dolls, there's seams and plastic and pivot on the prototypes. So they needed that cleaned up. And evidently I did a good enough job, and he hired me, and, you know, that was it. I was off to the races.
And so you, okay, I'm just going to jump forward a little bit because
like
you took
25
that,
years.
you grew, you built all this up, all this knowledge up, and you kept doing bigger and bigger jobs. And now you're doing like Hollywood movie posters, right? And this is
I mean, I've been doing Hollywood movie posters actually for 15 years now.
Okay, yeah.
It's, well, because I actually, when I said I went to Metaphor Imaging was the finishing house in LA for movie posters and advertising. So I went straight to the top place.
What have we seen? What kind of work when we see stuff? What have we seen?
I'm trying to think of what's current, because I have to tell you, I've been doing this so long, I forget. So let's see. I have so Mary Poppins is out right now. I did some standee work for that. I did Colette. I like the more independent, smaller films actually, because they tend to be a little more interesting. Castle Rock. A lot of streaming. Netflix. Amazon is a huge part of the entertainment world now. Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
But I don't usually think of that material being for print. So they're building. Yes, they're still doing posters.
Yeah,
posters
see posters, and when you guys go out around town, you'll see buses, and you'll see like sex education is out right now, and it happens to have a really big media buy, so it's on billboards, bus shelters. Yeah.
Okay.
So even though Netflix, you're used to those tiny little screens, actually it's built out huge. Forever for Amazon. That's out. What else?
Yeah.
What else?
So you're spending all this time in Photoshop, and again, retouching, compositing. What else? So what are you, when you talk about finishing? That's the main thing? Is compositing and retouching, or?
Yeah, 100%.
Color,
and there's a big difference between a compositor and a retoucher.
Okay.
Just so you know, I mean, it's if someone says they're a retoucher, they're not necessarily good at compositing.
Yeah.
Generally, if you're a compositor, you're probably good at both. Isn't that interesting?
That is. I didn't make that. I mean, I think of them as being very similar tools. Actually, you're dealing with.
They absolutely are. But retouchers, oftentimes you'll find retouchers who work on flat files. They don't need to mask. They don't need to bring in disparate elements and correct them. Okay. And when you do compositing, you do need to do all that plus the retouching.
But even with retouching, I would wish that people would still be using layers and doing non-destructive editing and so on. I mean, that is one of the.
Yeah, absolutely. But they might not be taking a 35 millimeter slide background or stock shot trying to combine with a medium format and having to deal with grain issues and whatnot and lighting.
Got it. Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense indeed.
Yeah.
What about so what? I'm just going to ask this crazy question, but what is like your favorite tool in Photoshop? What is it that you just
like this year? Because it changes every year. Something you fall in love. I'm telling you, it is all about content aware.
Interesting.
Holy guacamole! It is the most amazing thing to me. I use it for everything.
Yeah.
There's like at least 6 different types of content aware.
I know, they just keep adding more content aware.
And I love it. So that hands down, favorite tool.
So there's content aware fill, which is the one that everyone knows about. But there's a content aware scale, which
I used on a job yesterday. Absolutely. So like I had when you get a magazine, sometimes there's something called a belly band. It's a print that wraps around the magazine. Do you guys know that?
Yeah.
I know, it's great. Well, that's what we call it anyway. And we had to do some art, and there was we just needed the wood table that the designer had done built out to here. And if you content aware fill it, you'll get all this complicated striping, because content aware fill doesn't like high frequency. It likes low frequency.
Yes.
If that makes sense. And so I did content aware scale. It took me 15 seconds. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Can you define that for people at high frequency versus low frequency in an image?
Okay, so the current rage for the last few years in Photoshop is using frequency separation to do retouching. And it makes people really crazy, including myself, because it's a very analytical terminology. Okay. But basically, it's about separating the color and tone from the detail.
Okay, yes.
That's it. So high frequency is detail. It's little lines. Like if you look at my hair and all the little lines that make my nice weave job, I've got.
Right. Right.
That would be high frequency, but low frequency would be just the tone and the color.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Does that make sense?
It does. That's really helpful. Cool. So there's those are 2 different kinds. What other kinds of content aware What else is new?
There's content aware patch. There's content aware move and extend. It's all pretty.
I don't think I even tried that yet.
Oh, it's amazing. I have a nice little thing I did on Creative Live where it was just one 90-minute segment just on this.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
So you are going to be speaking at CreativePro Week, which is one of the I have to throw that in there.
Yes.
You're gonna be speaking at CreativePro Week in Seattle in June at the PSA Eye Conference, and we're having a struggle right now, a huge identity issue around whether we pronounce it PSA Eye or just Psy. And this is, Mark Heaps and Jesus and Ramirez have been starting to call it Psy because it's PSA Eye. It's kind of like it's Psy. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do with that.
I don't know.
However you pronounce it, Psy or PSA Eye at CreativePro Week, you're going to be there and you're going to be talking about retouching. So you get to, but it's okay if you talk about multi-layer, if you talk about compositing and retouching.
Yeah.
We'll allow
Here's the thing. I gotta say, I think about Photoshop is folks get really overwhelmed. Good golly, it's a huge program. I've been using this thing since Photoshop, 2?
Yes.
And I still learn new things, but I feel like if folks would just calm down, there's probably 5, 6 things at the most you really have to learn to safely drive Photoshop. Really. You'll be able to master more of it, but just if you can get 5 or 6 things down, you'll safely go down the road to Photoshop and get better and better without it being so overwhelming. Because I find folks get really lost. They'll have a job and they'll be like, oh, I need to do this. And they go, oh, because there's so much. And it's like, no, come back to the basics. Masking, layer management, color management, destination management. What I mean by that is your file size. Like, is it RGB? Is it CMYK? Where is it going?
Well, but those are big topics, especially when you start talking about color management. Those are big questions.
Yeah, but you can make them small. I think you can make them manageable. I really do. I don't think you have to go into the esoteric deep dive into it. You could start really basic, and then as you get better, as you progress, you learn more and more and more.
I really appreciate that because I've been saying for a number of years that you can do a little bit of work to make your color 90% better. And in order to get that last 10% to perfection, it's going to take a huge amount of work. But it just takes a little bit to make it a lot better. And I think that's one of the areas that I really agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of control. Like, I think folks get out of control so quickly in Photoshop, and they're clicking around, and they're looking here, and they're, my goal in life, to be honest, as an educator in Photoshop is to teach folks the mechanics of the car so that at 2 in the morning, they're not searching YouTube to try to find out how to figure out how to get their job done. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when I teach, I tend to I don't show you how to get my look. I'm not showing people how to duplicate what I do. I'm showing them, look, you want to manage some color, you need to change color on a job. Let me show you 6 different ways of doing it so that at 2 in the morning when you're on a job, you'll go, oh, I have 6 different ways to really quickly look at this. Way number 3, that's it.
I love this idea of instead of the just-in-time learning that most people do, people in CreativePro have heard me say this for a while, but the idea, instead of just-in-time, where people are like, oh my gosh, I have to know how to do this, I better go to YouTube. A lot of what we try and do is just-in-case learning. Like, you're going to need all this stuff.
Absolutely, that's brilliant, right? Yes.
Yeah, isn't that lovely? Yeah. And so the idea that originally came from Morty Golding, actually, he came up with that distinction, and it's so good. It really, really explains what we're trying to do with all this training. Listen, we're getting a couple of questions in the comments, so I just wanted to throw one out. Andrew asked about what your favorite Photoshop book is. Remember books? I remember books. Is there a book that you're like, wow, that was a really good Photoshop book?
Right now I would say there's 2 books that I would recommend. And let me see if I want to make sure I don't screw up any tiles. So Glenn Dews has a Photoshop for Photographers book, which I think is really great. I really love him. And I love how he approaches Photoshop in a very simple way and concise way. And you know what I could do, I think, is I can ask Erica if I could post links to these books maybe in the Facebook Live when we're done.
Let's do that.
Would that be good? Because I screw up titles sometimes.
Yep. No, that's
fine.
And
then Dennis Dunbar has a retouching book out right now that I think is really great.
Interesting.
Dennis Dunbar and Christine Eisman.
Awesome. Katrine.
Yeah.
Katrine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
those are the two books I would say right now are top on my list.
Nice. Also, Anne Marie was asking in the comments about when you're working on these big poster projects, posters and all the print collateral. Do you mostly work by yourself, or is it like in a team? Is this like?
That's a great question. It completely depends on the agency. Oftentimes with big campaigns, like what we call a station domination, where you're doing a train, billboards, vertical key art, bus shelters, phone kiosks, that kind of thing, you have to work in a team. You have to. It's just too much work. Absolutely too much work. So on the big jobs, that would be it. If it's a single 1448 bus billboard and a vertical, chances are I'll do it on my own.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. So Photoshop, do you use Illustrator?
I would say that it's interesting to hear that. I used to use Illustrator a lot more. I mean, a lot more in years past. I would say Illustrator was probably 30% of my work.
Wow.
10 years ago. But now it's down to 5%, oddly enough, which is really sad. But I will tell you this, David, that one of my goals this year, 2019, is I'm trying to integrate different software so that I can expand my skills.
Okay.
So for me, Illustrator, reintroducing myself to Illustrator is a big goal of mine this year. And then adding 3D to my Photoshop work.
Okay.
And you were talking about like just-in-time learning.
Yeah.
Before. So one of the things I've been doing is I'm working on a personal project. And I assigned myself that not only because it's just healthy to do personal work, but it was also to learn different software, and it gave me a vehicle to learn it that was no pressure, no risk, no schedule, no rules. And so that's what I assigned myself this year. I signed a personal project, and very specifically to integrate new software. And so software to. And
it sounds fabulous. I mean, I love this idea too of assigning yourself a job. And you have a little bit of pressure. You might even have a deadline, but you don't have the pressure of a client other than yourself, which is
and I think what I have is a commitment. That was the big thing. I made a commitment to myself.
I like that. That. So I did 3D, that. When you're talking about 3D, are you going to be exploring Dimensions, Adobe Dimensions?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah, and I want to share this with you because I started using Adobe Dimensions for personal work. Okay. And then I had a client come to me. I do a lot of product work. And I had in the past with this client, I would get these really crappy photo shoots, really crappy, of the product. And they want me to clean it up and, clean up the seams and everything. And I thought, you know what, can I just have the mechanical file? Give me your InDesign file or your Illustrator file. And I would do a basic shape in Adobe Dimension and then import it and then render it.
Nice. Yep.
And then take it into Photoshop. And that just started in the last 6 months.
And in fact, this is one of the areas where I know that Mark Heaps and Jesus Ramirez are going to be talking about Dimensions and Photoshop and that connection as one of their sessions at Creative Pro Week as well. So
and I would not miss that for the world. I have to be honest, it's a game changer. It's 100% game changer, especially for me, a Photoshop user who does product. I would be obsolete and not valuable to my clients if I still took those photos and just retouched them. It's up to me to bring a new imaging solution to them and say, great, you know what, let's try something different. Here you go.
Wow. Are there other tools that when you talk about 3D or other tools that you want to start incorporating, maybe some apps?
Yes, so different apps. So 3D in Photoshop as well. Yeah. And combining 3D in Photoshop and Adobe Dimension, and definitely get some training on that because that would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then I use something called Pixel Squid.
Yeah.
Squid is awesome. Like, I don't know if you could see behind me. I've got this personal series I've been working on. It's on my website if anyone wants to check it out under musings, because it's just personal stuff. And I've been using Pixel Squid to get elements and incorporate it into my files.
Interesting. Yeah, Pixel Squid is fascinating. They were a sponsor at our New Orleans event last year. And they are the idea of instead of forcing you to learn a 3D tool. They sort of create all the 3D images that you need, and then you just say, I want this angle. And
I have to tell you, David, it's been a game changer.
wow.
A game changer. And I actually got to use it on 2 jobs in the last month.
Wow. Oh my God.
Best subscription I have given myself. I gave it to myself as a gift.
Okay.
Because I know, there's a lot of subscriptions you can do and it gets expensive. And I thought, and I was doing it for personal work and I was trying to justify it. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm worth that money. It's a couple cups of coffee.
Cool. Yeah.
That's all. A couple cups of coffee a month.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to try and get them back to
They
Seattle
should totally
as well.
come back.
They're really great people, and they've got an amazing product. It's so true.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we go, I just need to. I'm looking at my questions over here. Like these are the questions that have come in, and also the ones that I wanted to make sure I got to ask you. We can't talk about
I
everything
like pina
here.
coladas. Did you want to? Yeah. I don't know.
We can talk about pina coladas. That would be good. So you've done. So I want to talk just a little bit more about retouching, because retouching in Photoshop is one of those things that we've all seen such incredibly bad examples of retouching. And I know, and I mean, this whole website's dedicated to this, right? The bad Photoshop fails, that sort of thing. Do you look at those fails and say and learn from them? I mean, are there ways to actually look at that and say, oh, wait a minute, I could fix that, or I know how?
I want to tell you the dirty little secret about that.
Yeah.
90%, I swear to Buddha, 90% of those Photoshop fails are client directed. I cannot tell you, honest to God, I cannot tell you how many times I have had clients say, do this. And I'm like, oh my Lord, no, please no, please no. And they write the check and it's like, all right. So when you see these actresses with these over retouched faces, I'm not delivering that first pass. No way, no how. And I get directed by somebody. And so I actually look at those Photoshop fails and I cry for people.
Because I know that the person, more.
So the artist who did it.
Is that, so if somebody asks you to do that, they're the client and the client's always right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I work in entertainment. So if I was going to have a stance that I'm not going to do this, then I need to have a different job.
It goes back to your original thing about photography. At some point, you need to make a choice.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something about, and I hope I don't go over time, sorry, that I'm very clear. I am hired to do a service for someone else. I'm executing someone else's vision, not my vision. I'm executing their vision. Now, I will try to influence their vision, if that makes sense. And that's my professional work. So on my personal work, where I make my decisions, and that's what I do. Does that make sense?
It does, totally does. So if they come to you and they say, make the eyes this big.
Or make them super white. Now, I will try to talk them out of it. I always try to talk them out of it. Like, have you thought about this instead? But in the end, they're the client, and I'm there to service them. Okay.
Well, this is great. Listen, it's so good chatting with you. And there are some other questions that have come in, and we're going to just answer those offline in the comment section on Facebook. But I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been great.
This is so great, and I'm so looking forward to seeing you in Seattle.
Yes, I hope everyone comes. It's going to be a hoot.
It is going to be a hoot. That's exactly right.
Yes.
We have owls up here in Seattle. So it'll be a hoot. And you'll be at either PSI or PSA Eye.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
We'll figure that out. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you also to Erica Gamet, who's been behind the scenes on the controls. And thank you, Erica. And we'll be seeing you all maybe in the next week or two with another wonderful interview. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. Have a great day.